What if I told you that somewhere beyond the veil of light, there stands an angel so terrifying, so brilliant, and so ancient that even the other archangels step aside when he enters a room? His name is Uriel, the flame of God, the angel who carries the keys of prophecy, judgment, and divine secrets too dangerous for mortal ears. And today, we're about to uncover the mystery heaven has kept hidden for thousands of years. In the beginning, before creation sang its first melody, and before the stars took their ordained places in heaven's vast orchestra, Uriel stood as the flame of divine understanding, a radiant being whose light made even constellations bow in reverence. Though he was not the most celebrated among the archangels, Uriel carried a wisdom so deep and a quietness so ancient that silence itself seemed to listen whenever he breathed the name of God. Unlike Michael, who bore the sword, or Gabriel, who delivered heaven's messages, Uriel was the keeper of mysteries, entrusted with truths too delicate for mortal minds and too heavy for ordinary angels to carry without trembling. For ages he walked the courts of heaven with steps measured by insight, his flame glowing softly as he observed the rise and fall of nation, the wandering confusion of men, and the subtle whispers of destiny shaping history's edge. Yet Uriel's service was marked not by thunder or army, but by stillness, waiting for the moment when the Most High would speak his name with purpose that carved eternity into motion. That moment came like a tear in the universe, a divine breath that pierced the celestial hush, for the Creator called to him with a summons heaven had never heard before. Uriel, son of flame, descend. The courts of angels froze, for they knew this was no ordinary command. God was sending the archangel not to earth, not to a prophet, not to a wandering king, but into the abyss, the place of divine judgment and forgotten sorrow. The abyss, known in the hidden scriptures as Tartarus, was the prison crafted not for humans or demons, but for angels who had forsaken their holy calling and abandoned heaven's purity for forbidden desires among mortal women. It housed the 200 Watchers, once glorious beings who taught humanity forbidden arts, crafting weapons, revealing enchantments, and opening doors never meant for human hands or hearts to touch. Their disobedience birthed giants, the Nephilim, souls not meant to exist, hybrids whose shadows fell across the world like storms soaked in blood and ambition, leading creation toward ruin until judgment bound them in chains of unending fire. To this realm of silence, regret, and eternal consequence, Uriel was commanded to descend, not for battle, not for rescue, not even to speak, but to witness, an assignment that felt heavier than all the stars he had ever guided. Without question and without hesitation, though trembling with awe, Uriel obeyed, stepping beyond the edge of heaven where the last threads of divine light clung to him like a farewell embrace. As he departed, even the stars dimmed, not out of fear but out of mourning, for they knew no angel had ever entered that realm willingly, and none had returned unchanged. Creation held its breath as the flame of God vanished into darkness. The descent was unlike falling or flying. It was a sinking through layers of silence so thick they felt alive, wrapping Uriel in shadows that smothered every echo of heaven until even his thoughts seemed dulled by despair. The deeper he went, the more the darkness tightened, not as absence of light, but as a presence, heavy, ancient, and hostile to anything pure. Even Uriel's flame flickered as though resisting the suffocating weight of hopelessness. For even an archangel is not immune to despair, and the abyss was crafted precisely to devour the memory of glory, drowning even angelic spirits in a sea where time, remorse, and regret collided endlessly. As Uriel walked through the first valley of Tartarus, the cries of the Nephilim echoed like fractured thunder, voices of beings whose existence had been erased from the earth, but whose souls lingered in torment between life and judgment. Their roars carried centuries of confusion, anger, and longing, begging for release from a fate sealed by the sins of their fathers, sins committed by angels who once walked among the stars with honor but fell for lust and pride. Uriel did not turn away, nor did he flinch, for he was sent not to pity or condemn, but to see, to hold the memory of this place so heaven would not forget what judgment cost even those created in glory. As he moved deeper, he entered the chambers where the Watchers hung in chains of celestial fire, their once beautiful faces now twisted by centuries of regret, some shouting curses, some begging for mercy, and some silently weeping. One called out, "Uriel, flame of God, why has heaven remembered us? Have you come to mock us, or to seal our doom forever?" But Uriel remained silent, and his silence struck the abyss like a hammer of truth. For Uriel was not a messenger this time, he was a witness, an eternal recorder of God's justice, carrying the burden of understanding so deep it would carve shadows into his flame forever. The Watchers saw his silence and trembled, for they realized heaven still saw them, not with pity, not with vengeance, but with a sorrow so profound it echoed even through the void they inhabited. Uriel looked at them not as monsters but as beings who had once stood beside him in radiance, now chained by choices they could never undo, and he felt the weight of divine sorrow settle upon his flame like a mantle of grief. But this was only the beginning, for God had not sent him merely to see the Watchers. There was a deeper darkness waiting, a presence older than rebellion, older than angels, older even than creation itself. Beyond the final chamber, past the ashes of fallen Nephilim and the chains of rebellious angels, lay a silence so thick it devoured even the sound of Uriel's flame, swallowing every whisper of existence into a void of pure nothingness. Here, in the deepest cell of the abyss, was the first prisoner, not Lucifer, not a demon, not death, but something far more ancient, chaos itself, the unformed and untamed force that existed before God spoke the universe into order. Chaos pulsed like a wound in reality, its form shifting in ways that defied creation, neither being nor void, neither darkness nor presence, but a raw power that strained against the boundaries set by the Creator in Genesis. When Uriel approached, chaos recognized him, not with eyes or voice, but with a presence that pressed into his mind, trying to unweave his essence and reduce him to formless nothing as it once was before creation began. "You are order," chaos whispered in a voice that was not sound but pressure. "You are flame. You do not belong here, child of structure, child of law, child of the one who bound me." The force pressed harder, trying to unravel Uriel's being, dissolving his thoughts, tempting him to surrender to the shapeless depths where identity dissolved and light became forgotten. But Uriel stood firm, not by his own strength but by the flame he carried, the flame lit not by his own glory but by the one who spoke light into existence with a single word. And so he answered chaos with a truth so simple it tore the void. "I shine not from myself. I shine from him who formed you." For a moment, the abyss shuddered, and even chaos recoiled, recognizing the authority in the Creator's flame, remembering the day it was pushed back to make room for the heavens and the earth. Uriel spoke no more, for his mission was not to argue nor to conquer but to stand, to testify silently that the light still watched, even in the deepest darkness creation had ever known. And in that silent stance, Uriel fulfilled the purpose God had carved into him long before time began, to witness, to carry truth, and to understand what judgment cost the heart of God. The Creator's voice finally touched him again, whispering through the void like a gentle command wrapped in sorrow. "You have seen enough, flame of God. Return and carry the weight of the pit." Uriel turned back, but his descent had changed him. His flame still burned with holy brilliance, but now it carried a shadow, not of sin, but of understanding, a depth that only those who have walked through darkness can bear. As he ascended, the cries of the Nephilim softened, the chains of the watchers grew still, and even chaos dimmed behind him, as if the abyss itself bowed in reluctant acknowledgement of the flame that refused to be extinguished. When Uriel returned to heaven's gates, the other archangels, Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, and the rest, looked upon him and immediately saw the difference, for his flame flickered with both brilliance and sorrow. He did not speak of what he had seen, for some truths are too sacred for words, and some burdens are not meant to be shared but carried in silence as offerings of obedience to the one who commands the stars. Yet heaven felt the echo of his journey. They sensed the depth in his flame, the gravity in his gaze, the quiet ache in his presence, and they understood that Uriel had touched a mystery most angels would never approach. And when the day came for the prophet Enoch to rise into the heavens and receive the visions of creation and judgment, it was Uriel who guided him, for only Uriel knew the cost of divine justice and the sorrow behind God's decisions. Uriel revealed to Enoch the secrets of the luminaries, the cycles of time, the coming flood, and the judgment of angels, speaking not with cold authority but with the weight of one who had seen the abyss with his own flame. For this is why God sent him, so that when Uriel spoke to prophets, he would not speak from the safe heights of heaven but from the aching knowledge of what lies beneath creation's foundations. Uriel's descent was not punishment but preparation, a shaping of his flame into a vessel deep enough to carry both wisdom and sorrow, both understanding and compassion, both truth and tenderness. And so, the story of Uriel teaches us a profound truth, that even angels are called into darkness, not to conquer, not to save, but to witness, to endure, and to carry understanding into the world with humility and grace. His journey reminds us that obedience is not always glory. Sometimes it is silent suffering, standing in darkness with a flame that refuses to die. Uriel returned from the abyss not as he was but as he was meant to be, marked by shadows that made his light deeper, wiser, and more powerful than before. And now his story continues into the next chapter, the chapter where the meaning of his descent unfolds and the purpose behind his sorrowful flame becomes clear, waiting to be revealed to hearts willing to understand. When Uriel returned from the abyss, heaven itself seemed to shift around him, not in fear but in reverent recognition, as though creation had sensed the shadow carved into his flame and stepped aside to honor the depth he now carried. The archangels gathered in the court of radiance as he ascended the last pillar of light, and though none spoke, their wings unfurled in quiet acknowledgement, for they understood that Uriel had walked through a silence even angels were not meant to endure. Gabriel, The herald, whose voice carried the tone of God's announcements, looked into Uriel's eyes and saw not darkness but a weary tenderness, the kind found only in those who have touched suffering and returned with wisdom instead of bitterness. Michael approached next, his armor glowing with the purity of endless battles fought for heaven's order, and he bowed his head, not as a superior to a lesser angel, but as a warrior recognizing another who had survived a battlefield invisible to the rest of creation. Raphael stepped forward too, the healer whose presence restored what life had broken, yet even he paused before touching Uriel's arm, sensing the invisible wound that could not be healed, for it was not an injury of flesh but a mark of divine purpose. But it was the voice of God that filled the courts, soft yet commanding, gentle yet unmovable, saying, "Uriel, flame of understanding, you have walked the depths where judgment burns and chaos remembers its chains." The angels bowed as the radiance of the Most High settled upon Uriel, and the Creator continued, "You descend not for punishment, but for comprehension, for my justice is not born of anger but of love too deep for creation to measure." The words struck Uriel with both comfort and sorrow, for he now understood the weight behind them, the pain carved into the heart of the one who creates and judges, lifts and casts down, binds and restores. For the first time in his existence, Uriel felt the tremble of compassion that bordered on holy grief, the ache of a father who watched his own angels fall, who listened to the cries of the Nephilim, who saw the corruption that nearly drowned the earth before the flood washed it clean. And so the Creator said, "Rise, Uriel. You will bear witness to my prophets, for they must understand not only my commands but the sorrow behind them." Uriel rose slowly, feeling the authority settle into him like a mantle woven from both light and shadow, a reminder that true understanding is born not from distance but from descending into the very places where glory seems absent. Heaven rejoiced at his return, yet even in their joy, a solemn respect filled the courts, for Uriel had carried part of God's own sorrow into his flame, and such a burden was not to be taken lightly by any creature of the skies. Time passed, though heaven does not measure time as mortals do, and Uriel's presence became a quiet anchor among the archangels, his flame steady, his voice calm, his wisdom deepened by what he had witnessed in the abyss of divine judgment. When the day came for the prophet Enoch to be lifted from the earth and brought into the realms above, it was Uriel who stepped forward, chosen not because of strength or rank, but because he had walked the very places Enoch would be shown. As Enoch ascended, trembling between fear and awe, Uriel met him with a flame soft enough not to blind him, yet strong enough to remind the prophet that he stood in the presence of one who had glimpsed the secrets beneath creation. "Do not fear," Uriel said, his voice carrying both comfort and weight. "You are here not to be judged, but to understand, for the Lord has chosen you to see what few mortals have ever known." Enoch, though overwhelmed, sensed the depth in Uriel's presence, the quiet sadness, the heavy wisdom, and he followed the archangel through the layers of heaven where light thickened like clouds woven from divine breath. Uriel revealed to him the courses of the luminaries, the paths of the sun and moon, the stars assigned to seasons, the gates of the winds, and the chambers of the thunder that rolled across the world with unseen purpose. Yet as they traveled, Enoch noticed that Uriel often paused before certain realms, pauses filled with memory, not hesitation, and the prophet realized that the archangel was not simply teaching him but reliving the journey he once made into the abyss. "Tell me," Enoch finally whispered, "what lies beyond the darkness you carry in your flame? What did you see that left this shadow across your radiance?" Uriel did not answer immediately, for some truths must be spoken not with haste but with a reverence that honors the weight of what they contain. When he finally spoke, his words were slow, steady, and wrapped in the humility of one who had tasted the sorrow of God. "I walked the abyss where the watchers abound, the angels who forsook their stations and mingled with the daughters of men, birthing giants who brought suffering to the earth." Enoch shuddered at the mention of the watchers, for their sin echoed in the legends whispered by ancient tribes, tales of beings who taught forbidden crafts and flooded humanity with violence, ambition, and unholy power. "I saw them," Uriel continued, "not as monsters but as fallen brothers, once radiant but now chained by their own desire, weeping over choices they can never undo yet unable to escape the judgment they earned." His flame flickered gently, as though remembering the cries that had echoed through the abyss, the regrets carved into faces that once worshipped beside him in purity. "But beyond them," Uriel said, "lies something older, something no prophet before you has been permitted to understand. It is not angel, not demon, not spirit, nor creature. It is chaos, the very force that existed before God spoke order into the void." Enoch gasped, for he had heard whispers of the ancient unformed, the darkness that had no shape until the Creator divided light from it, setting boundaries that even eternity respected. "Chaos remembers," Uriel whispered, "and it hates order. It seeks to unmake, to unravel, to return creation to formlessness. But God sealed it in the abyss so that life could exist without the threat of dissolution." Enoch trembled as he asked, "And you?" You saw it? Uriel nodded, the memory still heavy in his flame. I saw it. I felt its pressure on my essence. It tried to unweave me as though I were a strand of light out of place in its domain. The prophet bowed his head, overwhelmed by the reality that even an archangel could feel fear in the face of something older than existence itself. Yet I stood, Uriel said, not by my own strength, but by the flame placed in me by the one who shaped creation with his word. And in that moment, I understood that even judgment, terrible as it appears, is born from love, for love protects creation from what seeks to unmake it. Enoch felt tears rise, not from fear but from awe, for he realized that God's judgments were not merely divine punishments but divine protections, boundaries drawn around creation to preserve its beauty. Uriel led him onward, revealing more visions, of the places where souls waited, the chambers where prayers gathered like rivers of light, the throne where justice and mercy kissed in perfect balance. You will write what you see, Uriel told him, and your words will endure through generations as a testimony that God's heart is deeper than men imagine. Enoch nodded, feeling the weight of his assignment settle upon his spirit, knowing that his writings would echo through time long after his earthly life ended. But before their journey concluded, Enoch turned to Uriel and asked a question that pierced the very center of the archangel's flame. If God's love is so deep, why does he weep? For I feel sorrow in the air around you, as though heaven itself has cried. Uriel paused, his wings folding slowly as he looked toward the distant realms where the throne radiated with endless purity. God weeps, Uriel said softly, not because he is weak, but because he loves with a depth that creation cannot comprehend. Every fall wounds his heart. Every rebellion leaves a scar. Every soul lost to darkness leaves a tear upon eternity. His flame dimmed slightly, not in exhaustion but in reverence, as though speaking these truths required a quietness few beings could bear. When the watchers fell, Uriel said, God did not rejoice. He mourned. When the Nephilim cried in confusion, he mourned. When chaos tried to reclaim creation, he mourned again, not for fear, but for the pain of seeing what he formed with love threatened by destruction. Enoch felt his own spirit tremble, for he realized that heaven's power was matched only by heaven's compassion, and that judgment was merely love wearing armor to protect what was precious. Uriel placed a gentle hand upon the prophet's shoulder, the flame warm but steady, carrying both comfort and strength. You asked why I carry a shadow, he said. It is because I have seen the places where God's tears fall. I have felt his sorrow, and I carry it so that prophets like you may understand the depth behind his commands. Enoch bowed, overwhelmed by the holiness of the moment, for he finally understood that the path of obedience was not a path of fear but a path of intimacy with a God who loved fiercely, judged righteously, and wept tenderly. Uriel led him back toward the gates of heaven, where the journey would end and the writings of Enoch would begin, destined to shape the understanding of generations to come. Remember, Uriel said, his flame glowing with renewed brightness, that every judgment is a boundary of love, every command a shield, every warning a plea from a father who desires his creation to live, not perish. Enoch nodded as divine radiance surrounded him, preparing to return him to the world of men with visions that would echo through centuries, whispered in scrolls, guarded in secrets, and revealed to those who sought truth with humble hearts. Uriel watched him depart, the shadow in his flame now calmer, steadier, shaped not by sorrow alone but by purpose, understanding, and the gentle strength of a being who had walked through darkness and returned carrying light. For though the abyss had carved a shadow into him, it had also deepened his radiance, making him not just an archangel of understanding but an angel who carried within him the silent tears of God. And so Uriel remained forever changed, a guardian of divine mysteries, a witness to judgment, a companion to prophets, and a flame that carried both the brilliance of heaven and the memory of the deepest darkness creation had ever known. His story continues in every whisper of divine wisdom, every vision given to the humble, and every revelation that draws humanity closer to the heart of a God whose love is deeper than eternity itself. For Uriel is the reminder that true understanding is born not from staying in the light, but from carrying the light into the darkness, and returning with compassion strong enough to shape the world. Make sure hit that subscribe button for more angelic stories. Thank you.